Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for your time. My name's James Rilett. I'm Chief Product and Technology Officer for Open Mineral. We are a platform in the dark, dirty, dusty world of the commodities market. Hopefully I have a presentation any moment now. So yeah, very happy to be here. Flew in from the UAE, where we have a big office. We were at COP the last few days. Very excited to see the announcement and the really big, significant commitment to electrification and renewables, which means that the world is going to need a lot more of what our platform trades, critical minerals. So I'll talk about that a little bit. I'll talk about some of the challenges digitizing our marketplace, which a lot of you in the B2C sector and more advanced sectors will find horrifying, I'm sure. And I'll try and give you an overview of where we're going as a business. We did have the presentation. Can I have it? There we go. Okay, so this is us. So founded 2016-17 by a couple of ex-Glencore traders. Glencore is a name I'm sure you'll know, just down the road from here. But with a mission to be a digital disrupting force in the commodities sector. Started out as a platform, a marketplace, in an industry that doesn't really want a marketplace. Pivoted to becoming principal risk taker on some of our transactions. And so we now find ourselves as a kind of marketplace-enabled physical trader or a digitally native commodities trader with a marketplace. We've grown very fast, very quickly. And we closed our last funding round, our Series C, at the beginning of 2022, and Mubadala, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Abu Dhabi, or one of the Sovereign Wealth Funds, led our round. We are currently raising a couple of initiatives because our market is exploding in terms of opportunity, and it's very capital intensive. We're quite small, so we're about 85 people at the moment, last count, but we're in 14 different jurisdictions, and we are active currently. Our current book has material moving in 40 different global jurisdictions. Commodities trading is quite painful, quite global, but quite high margin. And this is that story that I was telling you about. The International Energy Agency, which traditionally was kind of an oil and gas group, are spending a lot of time and effort talking about critical minerals. These are the really important minerals that are going to power the energy transition. Literally, they're going to be part of the batteries, the power networks, and this means you need nickel, copper, some exotic stuff as well, but these are all things that we trade. As you've seen and heard, and in fact, if you just pop down to Zug and visit the Ferrari dealership there, you'll know that our sector's doing okay. Commodities trading continues to be lucrative, which is a bit of a mystery because it's a bit backwards. It kind of sucks, to be perfectly honest with you, as an industry. It's inherently hugely complicated and risky. You have long supply chains going across the world, and they haven't really changed for hundreds of years. You have a seller with some material, say, I don't know, South America, some copper concentrates, a buyer that wants to get that material, say a smelter in China, half the world in between, many different jurisdictions, and a lot of risk. So the industry that's grown up to move the material around the world has not really evolved since it was invented in the Middle Ages, I mean literally by the state of Lombardy, I think, who invented documentary trade. We're talking box files of paperwork. At the most technologically advanced, the emailed PDF is the common currency of moving these very expensive, very important, high-risk cargoes around. So in between the seller and the buyer, you have a bunch of intermediaries communicating incredibly inefficiently, adding delay and cost. And that causes quite a lot of friction, error, fraud, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And as a consequence, the global financing community, banks, who would traditionally grease the wheels of global commerce, stepping back. It's a big problem. The Asian Development Bank put out a report, updated that number actually. It's $3.4 trillion of trade finance that are missing from global supply chains. And that's especially true in our industry. And this is kind of why. So these are some of the big names that you will have heard this year who suffered fraud. That's quite a big fraud. $577 million of material finance that was not in fact there. And this is a very established, one of the best shops out there at doing this kind of business. How is that possible? This wasn't this year, the copper bricks. Those are actually bricks that have been painted with copper paint. So the paint was really copper colored, but that was the length of, that's the extent of how copper the cargo was, but it was paid for as if it was a cargo of copper. So this is ridiculous. How can it be that this very advanced, very high stakes, expensive industry is still doing stuff like this and causing the global finance community to step away? And what can be done? So you're starting to see non-traditional lenders stepping in. That's important, and that's part of the puzzle. But really for us, if you go back to the base principles, isn't there data? How can Amazon and Uber and all of these great marketplace businesses have revolutionized physical supply chains? Why isn't it happening in our industry? Well, in the commodities market, we have loads of data. It's a data-rich environment. The top one, that's the ADNOC Panorama facility in Abu Dhabi, where you can see in real time 80,000 sensors across their upstream network. If a bearing on a pump somewhere in the middle of the empty quarter of the desert needs changing, they know about it. You can see from space and from land-based sensors, AIS vessel data that can track any vessel anywhere in the world in real time. The bottom one, I really like this one. This is synthetic aperture radar satellite imagery. This is the ability to take at night and through clouds an image of anywhere in the world and measure whether something's moved, gone, grown, changed. So these are all data sources we have in our industry, and yet we're still emailing these PDFs around and shifting physical documents around the world. So the underlying operating system, the connective tissue of this very important global network, is physical contracts, global networks, expensive people, and no disrespect to my colleagues there, I love them all dearly, but they're very expensive and they're not doing necessarily 80% of their job is quite unsophisticated, actually. So we're dealing with paperwork overload. So what does the new world look like? How's this going to change? How are we going to unstick this stuck problem? Well, it looks a bit like this. And we're not borrowing or we're not reinventing the wheel. We're borrowing from other platform businesses that have solved this. So how do you know what you're getting from the other side of the world is really there and it's really the quantity you want? How do you know you're not buying a container full of sand? It's an inspection company, global network of inspection companies. Now, often they're pretty underpaid. They're working in some dusty site office in some far-flung port. But they've probably got a smartphone in their pocket. And they could probably two-factor authenticate themselves and take a picture of what they're doing. So if somebody does give them $2,000 in a brown envelope to change what's on the document, maybe out of all the documents they're going to maybe do that day, if you've got an application that's taken a picture of their face while they were doing their work, maybe they won't stiff you. So we've implemented this across some of our operations. Very easy to do, nothing anybody who makes apps for a living would be shocked by, but makes a big difference. Another big part of it is moving paperwork around and having a single version of truth, getting out of the Outlook inbox into something like a Dropbox. Not very difficult, but revolutionary. And actually putting cameras in warehouses to make sure that people aren't taking the stuff out of the back door or moving it around, or that it is really there. So really just upgrading the physical control environment with data and harnessing that information is a good way of de-risking what is a mysterious black powder on the other side of the world and turning it into an investable, understandable, low-risk asset. So this is where we want to get to. This is where we're working towards. We want to use data to de-risk this very risky, perceived risky trade, to remove fraud, error, delay, friction, and to make it much more investable, so that people who want to get a good return for an understandable risk while stimulating the energy transition and the vital raw materials that we'll need to electrify the world can participate. So, our core business, moving this material around the world on our platform. Really excited to announce a couple of weeks ago at the Abu Dhabi Finance Week the creation of a critical minerals trade finance fund. and a platform using some of our know-how and some of another company that we like who's done this very well with across other commodities assets, agricultural commodities, called Tradeflow Capital in Singapore. And so we've come together with a joint venture. So we're spinning off a bit of a platform. We're looking for an equity partner if anybody's interested. And if anybody wants fixed income-like returns while participating in the energy transition, then come and talk to me about investing in the fund. We'll do about an 8% return. You could leverage that up and get a 16% return. And it's a pretty attractive asset class once you get going with it. So thank you very much for your attention. Do please come and find me. And next time you think about the commodities world, know that there are people who believe in data, technology, and transparency, and it is going to transform so that we can do the energy transition. Thanks a lot.